On the next episode of the Level Par podcast, we speak with Emily Saul. Emily is the owner of ESaul Movement, and as a licensed mental health counselor, she speaks with athletes about the mental side of their respective games. Level Par is a story about being inside of a golfer's head during a very pressure-packed situation, and I thought she was the perfect person to come on our podcast. Emily is a dear friend, and I really hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Emily Saul, thank you for joining the podcast. We've been friends, what are we going on, like 12 years now? Maybe
at
15?
least. Yeah.
Isn't that scary? I remember the first time meeting you at the stadium.
Really?
And we finished a stadium workout in BG. It was like, Emily, this is Tom.
Right.
Tom, this is Emily. And I'm like, I can't breathe right now, but it's very nice to meet you.
And I have a recollection of being at a Monday, November Project workout on Com Ave on the BU campus.
Okay.
And you were running down Com Ave, people were gathering, and BG said to me, I want you to know that guy. That's Tom Lehman.
Well, I mean, what a time to be alive, I guess. You know, like it seems so long ago.
It feels like at least one lifetime.
Yes.
Maybe two or
I mean,
three.
we're not getting old, we're just getting wiser, I guess.
Just a lot more experience.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's really fun to be able to look back on, 2012, 2013, 2014, those years where November Project was just like growing and growing and growing. Yeah. And there were so many of us a part of it then. And what I love is being able to look now at the seeds that really became these just kind of like threads of people's lives.
Like small communities that got built out of these things.
Yeah, and relationships, like, people getting together, getting married, having kids.
Yeah.
People who've been like business partners or connected in a whole bunch of different ways. I love being able to see the threads of people that were in Boston that moved to other cities, and then kind of the way that like my world now, like working in sports psychology, I'm connected with people around the country, and it's so funny how there's just like these sort of threads that keep coming back, and someone's like, oh, so-and-so, and I'm like, yeah, I know them because they lived in Boston because November Project.
All roads lead back to Boston at some point. I think that what community, and I think first off we'll get into the, you kind of alluded to it, the sports psychology piece. So much of what Level Par is about being inside the head of an athlete when pressure is packed, when pressure means everything, and you have to stick to your principles and stick to your fundamentals. But so much of your work is about that mental game with athletes. Can you talk about how, I guess, like your career as an athlete, but also how you transition into doing what you do now?
Yeah. I was always a really active kid. I grew up in Minnesota. We lived on a 10-acre farm, so my brothers and my sister and I were always climbing trees, running around, like literally just like running around in the world. And so that for me from a very young age was just a sort of core principle of like how you live, like you are an active physical being. I did some organized sports, but when I got to college, I walked onto the rowing team. My sister, who's 5 years older than I am, she had gone to Boston College. She had joined the rowing team when she was there. We had cousins who rowed, so she was sort of like interested in the sport. So when I got to school, I happened to go to a Division I school athletically with no particular interest or intention to be an athlete. But I knew that there was a rowing team, and so I was sort of interested in like, oh, I guess I could, knowing my sister's like love for it and how much she enjoyed being a part of it. But it was a club program at BC. And so I walked on because I wasn't doing other sports, and I was like, oh, I probably should do something. So I walked onto the team and earned a spot, and then earned a scholarship, and ended up rowing at a Division I school and getting to compete on pretty big stages and see the growth of at the time a very new rowing program. We are literally this year celebrating the 30th anniversary of the existence of the program.
Wow.
So I'll go to Tulsa for homecoming in the fall to celebrate that, which will be fun. But I, over the course of those 4 years, through just my own development as an athlete individually, but also being a part of the team and just kind of learning the dynamic of a team sport. And rowing is very much about the unison, the like synchrony of those 9 people who are in a boat. And there just were lots of lessons about like winning, losing, hard work, the sense of like individual success, but also failure, and how all of those things can be learning opportunities. And so very much about how I have the ability to get in my own way or the opportunity to like help myself move forward physically through what I think about, what I focus on, how I regulate myself. So just as an example, I have a particular memory of walking from my dorm to the gym, and we were able to row most of the year because the weather is like mild enough. The river didn't freeze. But we would have like off season in the winter. And so we spent a lot of time on the rowing machines, which we call ergs. And so we'd have to take erg tests, a 2,000 meter test. You sit on the erg and you
makes me want to throw up right now.
It made everybody throw up. Yeah. And so we would have to like take these erg tests, and it really is this measurement of you versus yourself, but it's you versus your team. And in a team sport like rowing, you get those 8 people. It's not about like who's faster than the other, right? You're competing against other boats, but to get into the boat, you have to be like the fastest. You have to, and so this erg test is a big measurement. And I remember walking to the gym and just feeling this intensity of pressure and expectation, and just finding myself crying on the way. And on the one hand, it wasn't like I planned it. It just was happening. It was easy to be critical of myself. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I crying? Like, don't be so soft, like those kinds of things. But I also came like very quickly to understand that my internal activation was rising so much that being able to cry was really just an outpouring of that, release, like an offset. And so it helped, right? So instead of looking at it as like, oh, that's a bad thing, I shouldn't be crying, I shouldn't be upset, or I shouldn't be kind of intense like that. It was more so recognizing, oh, that's a cycle that actually helps. I'm getting focused, I'm getting ready, I'm getting activated, and then I have to re-regulate, and that's a way for that to happen. So if I cry before a race, or if I cry before an erg test like that, that's probably a good thing, because my system's working, right? Like learning to figure that kind of thing out. And in taking the erg tests, which are these intense things, a lot of my teammates would listen to really like techno music, like high
heavy metal,
music, just a heavy beat, like fast tempo. And the day that I pulled my fastest erg time ever, I was listening to Gregorian chant.
Nice.
So I had figured out that music as a tool, like as something that can influence how I'm like regulated, like that my state of being, that I was already really activated, and I didn't need music externally. Right. I actually needed to come way down. So using something like that music to help settle or to help me feel a little bit more grounded allowed me to kind of find that physical state where I could actually do what I was capable of doing. And so it's examples like that led me through those 4 years to realize that I had gotten as much of an education from my athletic experience in college as I had gotten from my academic experience. And I studied psychology, so I had that degree, and my coach was very influential and kind of offered me some things to read, and he brought in another coach that helped us do some like mindfulness and kind of learn more about the influence of mindset on performance. And so the idea that there is a field called sports psychology, that you could take this like, sport thing and then this academic piece of psychology and put them together. And I was like, I'm in. I don't really know what I'm going to do with it. Like I didn't have at the time, I didn't have a sense of who I wanted to work with or, how, in what environment I wanted to apply it. I just knew this was something that I wanted to understand better and that I believed very much had the power to help people not just be better athletes. I really wanted to focus on how I could help people be more themselves, be better them. And that sport was really the medium through which we are able to just discover ourselves, develop ourselves. It's one of the reasons why I call sport, whatever your movement practice is, whether I work with a lot of runners in my practice, but whether it's golf or running or curling, it doesn't matter what the sport is, but it is both a classroom and a laboratory. It's an opportunity to, as a classroom, just learn about yourself. Yeah. Like you want to understand what your patterns are, what your tendencies are, or what makes you anxious, or where you feel confident. Like you are going to discover that if you have a movement practice and you're dedicated to that. But it's also a laboratory, as in you can go try things out, you can experiment, you can figure some things out, and really kind of cultivate who you want to be, both as an athlete and as a person.
So after the Gregorian chants and you had a chance to regulate yourself, what things were going through your mind as you're on the erg?
Yeah.
Trying to know that it is a competition against your teammates, but also like this is a barometer for yourself, but a barometer against other people as well too. So like there's so many different combination of competitive juices that are flying in that moment. What was going through your head as you're like just rowing on that machine for as fast as you possibly can?
All right, this may not be the answer you're anticipating.
I anticipate no answers, so whatever answer you give me, I'm ready for.
Okay, so the like real and genuine answer to that is even though there was an understanding of the potential impact of the outcome, right? So whatever time I produce, puts me in some sort of rank on my team. There's also ports and starboards, right? And I was a starboard, so I had to be like I wanted to be fastest of all the starboards. But so there's some awareness of that, as in like this has some implication on my whole team. I think at the time I wasn't particularly afraid of like not making the varsity 8. Gotcha. So that was a good thing, or beneficial for me at the time. So there was a little bit of like big picture awareness, almost like periphery in my vision of like wanting to maintain that sort of status of being, fast or fastest on my team. But in the moment, as in how did I get through that, 7-ish minutes of time, it was drilled all the way down. So instead of this like panorama view, it was zoomed all the way into these segments of strokes that were like quite often really only like 10 strokes at a time.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the focus was very narrow on the quality of the effort, as in my body needs to feel this sensation in my legs and in my back and in my arms, feeling the rhythm of my breath in relationship to the drive and the recovery of the stroke. And so it's just this awareness of those physical sensations and seeking to maintain that. There's awareness of, there's a computer that tells you what your split is for the stroke. Yep. And so just looking to be as consistent as possible. So I was focused on that, but also holding very loosely, like the idea that I know the number I want it to show.
Sure. Yeah.
But when it shows that, it's really easy to be like, oh no, but what if the next one's not that? Like our brains want to anticipate. And so just going like, okay, it's just right there. Just that again. Just that again. That's okay. That's that again. Like really just trying to stay very, very present,
Yep.
and counting segments of strokes, because if I only have to focus on, say, 10 strokes at a time, that I'm just going to work at that effort for those
Yep.
10 strokes.
Right.
I can get done with that and be like, okay, I did that.
On the next.
And then 10 strokes. And so defining the pieces that allow me to be successful, but not really focusing on the big picture.
Yep.
I'm not at all focused on like what the time is going to end up to
You're
be.
going to be there no matter what, right? You're going to be in that erg for until you hit 2000.
That's right. Yeah. And the time itself, like what the actual result is, like that's going to take care of itself.
Yep.
If I put my focus on what's the time going to be, I actually get more anxious, which for me in that moment is going to make me more activated,
Sure. Yep.
and then I'm dysregulated. And I don't want to be operating from a place of fear. I want to be operating from a place of competence, comfort, just like safety, basically.
Yep.
Even curiosity. For me in that moment, it was just about staying, like being as steady as I could possibly be. And so focusing on like, I'm just doing this. I'm just doing this. So I just need to feel this in my body. I just need to feel this in my body. I just need to like hold this little piece, get to this end. So I'm building successes in chunking it down into those small little segments. So
Yeah.
I can like, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I
Yeah.
can do this. So I was really working to maintain that state of mind and focus on what I could do effectively, which add that all together, it results in what ended up being my fastest time.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you were the fastest starboard?
It's pronounced starboard,
starboard,
but it
okay.
is spelled starboard.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, as you can see, I'm a sailor or a,
Yeah,
or a rower
right.
by any means, but I'm a land mammal, as they call
That's
it. But,
fine,
But
that's fine.
as you were saying that, and I think about as a golfer, like how would you piece things together? And a lot
Yeah.
of times, guys and men and women will break up their chunk of 18 holes into 3-hole matches.
Yep.
And say, if I can stay consistent within this 3 holes, and then when it's done, wipe it away.
Yeah.
Focus on the next 3.
Which is great.
Some people go shot by shot. Like, how do I continue to stay? And I think you're always thinking shot by shot, but it's part of a bigger score that you're part of.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it's tough to always keep your head right where your feet are.
Absolutely.
No matter what you're doing.
Yeah, I think one of the skills that comes up that I end up talking about a lot with like any athlete, any performer, is this capacity to zoom out and zoom in. What happens when we stay really zoomed out, when we sort of think big picture, and when we focus big picture, the reality is you can't play 18 holes at once.
At once, no.
Right?
No.
You can't. You can't run a whole marathon at once. And so what happens is our brain, like a sort of lower functioning part of our brain, in I call it our survival brain, which is basically monitoring like what's the task in front of me, and then what are my resources to be able to respond to that task. Okay? So if my brain assesses the task in front of me as being really big, and not only it takes a long time to do it in time, but it's also like pretty challenging, okay, and it's important, so it like means a lot, right? The bigger conceptually and physically it is, the more our brain goes, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And then it's just matching it with what are our resources to be able to handle that. And ultimately, that part of our brain it's assessing mostly our physical resources. So how physically demanding is that going to be relative to our physical resources? So it shows up a lot with marathon runners, because there's a lot of effort and a lot of time you're going to spend running. And if you don't have enough calories in your body, or you don't have enough sleep sort of in your system to be able to tackle that, your brain is going to choose to respond to that task with more of a reservation or a guardedness in order to conserve the energy that we've got. Okay. And the same is true in golf. I think golf is an incredibly mental game. So it is physically demanding. You have
Yeah.
to be consistent
Sure.
and very precise, and it is like it's a lot of focus for a long time.
Yeah.
And because you're not moving consistently, like a marathon runner is constantly moving.
Sure.
You also have to be able to, as a golfer, like dial in, like get focused, and then you're like walking to your ball.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Right. And there's so much,
then
like,
you're
there's time
unfocused.
until action happens. There's
Yeah.
so much time in
Right.
between the action of it going down. Whereas, like, because you and I both run marathons,
Yeah.
like, you are just kind of looking at the next mile that comes up, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
like 10 left, 11 left, like 11 left, 19 left. Okay, where's my body? How is it feeling?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas in a golf shot, it's like everything that leads up to that moment could derail you in so many different ways, but
Yeah.
you don't know until you get up and hit the ball.
Yeah, and that's where like your ability mentally to be able to like dial your focus in and then like take a break, but then get back to focus and then take a break and get back to focus. Like, so kind of dialing in and out.
Sure.
But the zooming out and in terms of the scale of your perspective, that also plays a really big role. Okay, so kind of getting back to what the survival brain does. If you are looking at this like amount of time or the amount of work or kind of how hard it's going to be to execute on 18 holes and you're focused there, your nervous system in response to that focus is going to be like, oh God, like I don't even know where to start, right? So it's much more likely that there's going to be this like defensiveness, sort of this guardedness, because the threat, right? The challenge, which your survival brain is focused on, just am I going to live or not, right? I got to live through this.
Yeah.
Your performance goals are not always aligned with your survival goals.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? So if you start functioning in survival mode because you're like, "Oh my God, like this is going to be so big or so hard, or if it doesn't go well, it's going to be so bad."
Yeah.
Right? So we have to be able to understand the big picture, but then we have to be able to zoom into what is the task at hand. Like, what's the piece in front of me that when I focus here, it both feels doable, as in it doesn't feel scary or overwhelming. It's not sort of bigger than I've got resources to handle. So that's why the like 3 holes at a time is like very manageable.
It's a good chunk.
I can handle three holes at a time, right? Yeah. Like, and then you zoom in even more to say, now on this hole with like what this hole asks of me or what the challenges are here.
Yep.
What are my tactical and technical like specifics? So what are the very small things that I need to do in terms of like, what's my breath? What's my word? What are my physical cues? And then how do I just execute on what I'm intending to do here? And if I can focus in enough to really execute on like, this is it, like this is all I have to do, and it's very manageable, instead of going like it's this, but it's going to have, some like domino effect on all the other things, right? That's hard to now execute well if I'm trying to be both zoomed out and zoomed in at the same time. So that is a skill that for a lot of performers, to know that like it is a lot and it is important, and I'm going to let that be like so far in the periphery that I almost can't even see it, that I'm going to now focus in on like what's going to help me execute my capacity best in this moment. And that kind of letting go for a lot of people feels really scary because, to use another sports metaphor, we always say, keep your eye on the ball.
Right.
Right? Like and a lot of people feel that you have to be very like linearly focused on the outcome
For every second that you're doing something.
Because if you're not, then you're going to like get off track or that sort of thing. And the reality is that's not true.
Yeah.
Right? You can be pointed in very much the right direction. So if, again, from that big perspective, you're like, okay, I know what I'm trying to do, and I am like moving in that direction. I know I'm working toward it, but I don't have to stay focused there. I can shift my focus now to like the steps in front of me, like the club in my hand, the swing I'm taking now, right?
And use your body almost instead of like, I mean, I listened to this guy, Chris Williamson, who's always talking about like getting out of his brain and getting into his body.
Yeah.
Is that
Yep.
kind of what you recommend to people as
Oh,
they're going
yeah.
through those things? Yeah.
Yeah. If anyone hasn't read the book, The Inner Game of Tennis, it is a must read for all athletes, and that's the big premise of that book is they call it what does he call it? Mind one and mind two, I think, but it really is this distinction between our like thinking mind and our doing body.
Sure.
Okay. And the way that we learn sports, there is an element of like cognitive understanding. We get instructed on like, okay, put your hand here and here and like hold it like this, and you want to feel this. And so we have some element of like constructing it cognitively. But when we really learn something, there's an integration into our body's ability to do it. And when we practice and practice and practice, right? The reason we do drills and the reason we go to the driving range and take a million shots is so that your body begins to know it and understand it way, way better than your thinking mind ever could. The example that I often use to sort of teach the concept is if, we're sitting in the same room. So if I took a ball and I just threw it like at your head, okay, chances are you wouldn't let that ball hit your face.
I would hope not.
I mean, you would at least have
an effort,
some effort to like block it,
Sure.
but more likely than not, you'd actually be able to catch it. Okay, so if you tried to regulate that action, that response to me throwing the ball with your thinking mind, you would absolutely get hit in the head.
Sure.
Because your thinking mind, like, relative to
raise your hand, like do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
You'd have to be like, she's throwing a ball. It's coming toward my head.
Yeah.
Based on the physics, I think and then you'd already have your teeth knocked out. Whereas, what really happens is your body has a knowledge and a wisdom and a capacity to function that is, the simplest way to describe it, it's 1,000,000 times wiser and faster than your thinking mind. Okay. So if we can, as you said, be in our bodies, that we're operating more from our bodies than trying to like control it with our thoughts, our cognitive brain, we're going to get wiser, more efficient responses. The problem for a lot of us is that we live in a world where we hold a higher priority. We sort of weight more our thoughts, right? So we're human beings. We have this capacity. It's what distinguishes us from other mammals, is that we can have this thought. But the fact that we believe, because I can have thoughts, that must be the most important, like, regulator or controller of all things. It's just wrong. Like, especially in sport, it's very much wrong. And so to be able to recognize that I don't have to think something. I don't have to, control it with my thoughts in order for it to be like a good outcome. In fact, in sport, it's mostly the opposite. If you can set an intention, you know that you do understand it, and then you really just let that go, and you use more of your awareness and your focus, which is different than thoughts. And you use that kind of in combination with the skill and the real kind of intuitive wisdom that our bodies have, to be able to then execute on these physical activities and the practices much more effectively.
I think what, so level par starts out with basically a guy who's been in flow state for 17 holes. And you open up the book and you get introduced to the character, but you get thrown smack in the middle of him on the 18th hole trying to accomplish something that you later learn is something he's never done before. So flow state is something that I think if you go on Instagram and you just like look up flow state, everybody's got a different way for how they get into it. Is there a true definition of what flow state is? And then B, how do you train your body to get into it and or is that even possible? Does it just happen?
It's a good question with a complex answer.
Sure, of
so,
course, yeah.
there, the person credited with sort of naming, identifying it. Flow state has certainly existed in
Sure.
our human experience for a really long time, but Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, which you have to look up the spelling of that, but his name, he wrote a book called Flow, and the understanding of what flow state is it's I guess best described as an experience of a deep focus, a sort of timelessness. It's almost an experience of like, time is slowing down, and there's this like, there often is a sense of like ease even in effort.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are like, "Ooh, like how do I
tap into
how
it?
do I tap into
Yeah.
it, and how do I control it?" And the whole thing is you cannot control, right? You absolutely cannot decide yourself into flow state, right? In fact, like the more you think about it, the farther away you are going to get.
Which is such like that's so sick. It's so sick.
So I guess one of the ways that I think about it is if I work really hard at something, again, from a cognitive perspective, we tend to think that like the more effort I put into it, like the harder I try, like that must be good because more is better.
Sure.
Okay. But there's action in not doing. There's action in like holding something less tightly, right?
Yep.
But if you hold really strictly to this idea that like doing something is like taking an action, then you'll try too hard and you'll be stuck.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of creating the right scenario, creating the right conditions to allow flow to happen. It has much more to do with what you're letting happen than what you're making happen. And I'm like using those hand gestures intentionally because letting is like, as if you think about your attention, sort of what you're focused on, as like a butterfly, you can open your hands and be like, how about this little butterfly, like as a place to land, and it can kind of come and it might like that spot, and so you can rest your attention there for a while, and that might be really helpful. Okay, but it doesn't work really well to try to like grab the butterfly and like force it places, because that isn't how it works, right? And so a lot of the goal when we're trying to create a flow state is really about what are the conditions, what's the scenario, sort of what's the setup that makes it most conducive for that to happen. And that goes back to how we're regulated, right, in terms of whether we're really activated or underactivated or kind of right in that optimal zone of dialed in and focused, but not overwhelmed. If you're going into something feeling like, okay, this is life and death, or like this has to happen. Anytime that someone goes into something, even when it's like maybe the most important thing to you, but if you go into that competitive environment, like go to that last hole, and if the thoughts are, or the expectation is like, this has to turn out a certain way or else, I'm sorry.
It's probably
like,
it's not gonna happen the way that you think it's gonna happen.
The reality is just the way that our biology works, the way that our brains work. If you go in with such a clear sense of like what has to happen, that there's a right or a wrong, or this like it ends up to your brain feeling like life and death. Okay. And anytime that something feels like life and death, you're getting more of a survival response, because if life is on the line, then the only way that our bodies know how to respond to that is with this like stress response.
Tensing up and
exactly.
Yeah.
So if life is on the line, if it's life and death, then I have to defend against the threat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And guess what? If you're standing at that tee, and the outcome of this last hole is what's going to determine life and death, then the threat is
the action.
the threat is the
thing.
hole, the threat is the club, the threat is the ball.
Yeah.
And therefore you're going to get physically a more constrained, a more guarded. So, and any sport, like your optimal movements, your most effective and efficient movements are going to happen when you're like feeling really comfortable and really good and sort of like open versus closed and guarded. And so it's about being able to go in. One of the ways that I think it's best described as going in being like deeply invested. And you can be deeply invested in the outcome, right? You can want to win. You can want to, for whatever the score is going to be. But you also need to be peacefully detached from the outcome.
Yeah.
Right? So I can go in and say, of course, I'm going to put everything I can into golfing the best that I can today. And the reality is you're either going to get that score, like this score or that score. You're going to like win or not.
Yeah.
You're going to come out like better, like just those are facts.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And if you can go in being as open to any outcome,
Any possibility,
right? And sort of equally open to all of those possibilities, then there is nothing to fear. And therefore, you just go do what you know how to do. Go do what your body knows how to do. So it's not that we can just, prompt flow state, but we can really think about what I'm focused on. How I'm framing things. So if I frame things in that like win-loss, pass-fail, life-death way, I'm going to influence like what state I'm in. If I can, go into it focused more on the process and executing on those steps, then I am focused on like, what's the outcome going to be? Again, I'm going to make it easier for my body to do what it knows how to do rather than getting afraid and trying to protect against the experience.
As you were kind of talking about flow state, and I kept coming back to this thing in my head where it was like, you're trying to control an external thing that lives within inside you. And like, how do you do that? I mean, how do you, is it when you're kind of coaching an athlete and they know that they have an important thing to come up, whether it be a race, whether it be whatever. Are you coaching them to put themselves in the scenario beforehand? Like, so like, say if you're a runner, for instance, you know that you want to run a marathon in a sub 4. So you know that you have to run right around 8-minute miles, like for the most part. Maybe
9-minute
9-minute miles. Sorry, 8 would be really fast. So 9-minute miles. Are you saying that, like, are you training them? Are you telling them as part of like their training that they need to, train around that time for an extended period of time so their body gets comfortable with it? Because I liken it to being, when you're playing golf and you want to put yourself in a situation where there is, that shots are going to matter. You're probably playing in small tournaments leading up to your big tournament.
Yep.
You're probably running races leading up to your big race. How many times are you like asking your athlete to put themselves in a situation where they do have to perform like it is their big event?
Yeah. I think that maybe there may be some uniqueness in those two sports, but a lot of what I ask people to do is to look at the opportunities that they have in their training. So whatever the context of their practice is, and any competition environments that if runners do races that are, shorter distances than a marathon in that training build. But really what I'm asking them to do is practice the kinds of tools that they're going to need to use on race day. And so it's not so much like you have to feel exactly like you're going to feel.
Right.
There, you certainly can do some visualization.
It's important
and try
to have that like bank that you know that you can
Yeah.
physically go there. But
Yeah. Well, there just has to be practice
Yeah.
at anything that you want to use in competition. You have to practice other times because, think about just even the physical aspect of the sport. Okay. If you did a whole bunch of like practice rounds and you went to the driving range and you did all kinds of like drills and that sort of thing, and then you said, okay, but when it comes to like the big match, I'm gonna do this different thing,
yeah.
and I'm gonna plan to do that different thing
Right.
on that day.
Without having any proof that this might work under any kind of circumstance.
Yeah. So there's both not the evidence of
Yep.
that being
Yep.
effective, but you also don't have any practice under the sort of elevated pressure or the kind of like amplified environment that is a competition setting. You don't have any practice using that skill in that environment. Okay. You're not gonna do a good job
No.
using
No,
that,
no.
right? So, and basically any learning process, even if we were talking about like remembering words, okay?
Yeah, sure.
What we would do if we're going to help you learn to remember words or like a spelling bee kind of thing, if you want to practice like being able to spell words under the pressure of a competition, like the big spelling bee, then we have to start practicing the spelling of words under like no pressure. And then get really good at spelling all kinds of words under no pressure. And then we gradually increase the feeling of pressure and have these opportunities to, with increasing degrees of that difficulty, perform the same kind of skills, but with increased pressure. So there has to be this sort of developmental process
Sure.
to then be able to, under high pressure, execute on those same things with the same kind of consistency. What happens without that developmental process, the real kind of foundation building of those skills, is under higher pressure, we will revert to whatever kind of skill set is most mastered. Does that make sense?
Oh, I mean, it's kind of like that James Clear, like you rise to the level of your systems or you fall to the level of your systems, right? You can continue to, I mean, if you have a system that hasn't worked or you have a system that does work, like you're going to go in that one direction no matter what.
Yep.
I think a lot of it too, like from a golfer's perspective, is having like such a really rock solid pre-shot routine. Because I think that's, in a nutshell, the zooming in, zooming out. Like you know that you are only going to perform, like it's going to be a split second of hitting a golf ball.
Right.
But you have I don't know what the official time is that you need to actually hit the ball.
Yeah.
Like there is, like you put on a clock for the
Sure.
most part, and like if you're not on pace. But like you have about like a minute to really put your mind together to say, okay, this is what the wind's doing, this is what the yardage is, this is how I'm feeling right now. I'm shaking right now. Like I don't know if it's gonna go right or left, but I know I have a tendency to go that direction.
Sure.
So that's that zoom in, zoom out. And but I think having that pre-shot routine and having almost like a fundamental checklist that you could say, these are the things I need to do before I perform, will help you move in the right direction.
Yep. Great. So take the idea of a pre-shot routine and you might say, hey, I know the best golfers do this. I've read books that say this is a good idea to do for golfing. And so I'm going to do that. So I've got it in my head, and at competitions, like I'm going to do that pre-shot routine. But when I'm just like shooting around, or if I'm at the range, like I'm just taking shot after shot after shot. Okay. Why are you not practicing that when it's easy?
I know. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I think a lot of times, like you get into the bad habit of just hitting ball after ball after ball, thinking that why not take that quick second to be like, this is the thing I need to do 20 seconds before I hit this ball. And if I replicate that enough times, I know even if there's 30, 40 people around me, like in the book, or
Mm-hmm.
on the PGA Tour, there's 10 to 12,000 people around a
That's
green.
right.
It doesn't matter because you are in your,
Because
you
you
are
know
there.
what you are doing,
Yeah.
and the external environment is irrelevant,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because you're able to dial in your focus to, like, when I do this, I feel ready. I know how to execute on my very small set of tasks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't, I'm certainly not saying that every single shot you ever take at the driving range needs to, like, have that pre-shot routine. However, if you don't practice that, if you believe that the only thing I have to practice is the physical side of this, you're wrong.
Yeah, you're only doing not even half of the work. I mean, a lot of times you hear people say that golf is 90% mental and 10% physical.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, when you're speaking to your athletes, like, you're not teaching them stride. You're not teaching them, they know how to run.
Right.
You're teaching them to believe that they know how to run.
I am. So a lot of what I'm looking at with any athlete is, and again, runners and golfers alike. A lot of what I'm looking at is what are the practices that you are using mentally, and what's the effect on how you perform. Okay. So a good example, I worked with a golfer who, came to me saying, I'm really good at putting. I actually am really good at putting, but I frequently find myself getting done with a putt and then being like, why did I just do that? Like, recognizing, and his specific was, the worst thing you can do putting is hit it short.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
sure.
you haven't even
There's
given
no-
yourself
there's
a
no
chance,
shot. Yeah,
right?
sure.
Like, there's no chance to get it in if you don't
Yep.
even get it to the hole. Okay, so he's recognized, like, he knows this, he believes this very strongly, and then he finds himself, like,
Leaving
hitting it short.
Yeah.
And wondering, like, what just happened? Like, I know this, so how would I
Yeah. Why do I keep failing at the same
yeah,
consistent thing?
yeah, basically. And so I asked him, like, well, what are you focused on before your shot? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, I think
Yeah.
that has a big role to play in what's happening. And so all we did was we focused on creating an intention, a conscious intention. So this was actually where we were using his kind of thoughtful mind,
Yeah.
but using his thoughtful mind to dial his attention into, like, to allowing his body to do what he knows how to do, what he's able to perform very well when he's focused on it. Okay. And so what we did was we made the edge of the green, this, like, almost like a force field. So it was the cue for him to go, do what you know how to do. That was it.
I'm in the cathedral. I am in the zone. I am in the.
Yeah. And that was actually the cue, was do what you know how to do. Right? Do, like, so we didn't have to get too complicated about anything, right? It was just this, like, see that edge of the green. So this, like, we visualize this ahead of time, that every single time you step from your foot, like, onto the edge of the green, that you are, like, on, like, the rest of the, like, conversation you were just having with your buddies, like, everything else just disappears, and, like, you are here to be the best putter that you possibly can be, and your body knows how to do that. So, like, game on, basically, like, lights on, intention on, like, pay attention.
Yeah.
Okay. And he, like that, just absolutely changed things. And all that was a shift of attention, as in, focus on what you are intending to do. He didn't have to change anything about how he was golfing. He basically just had to, like, turn the switch on. Right.
It's just that way. I came here for a free session. We're just with the recording is just going. I have so many things in my brain, but no, this is I think this is going to help a lot. I mean, I hope you're ready if a lot of people watch this. Like, you might get some more golfers coming your way too, because there's just so many parallels. And I think that what I've noticed about the game of golf and how it's grown, it's no longer just about like high-end juniors and high-end people playing golf. Like, there are clubs and there are members, there are member guests, there are tournaments that people want to be a part of. I mean, similar to the running community, right? Like, there are 5Ks that people want to get off the couch and they say, I just want to finish it. But then there are other people who say, I want to break 20 minutes in a 5K, and I'm not going to stop doing these races until I get there. And so there are mini goals, but also, like, you don't have to be doing this as a professional athlete. This can just be your thing. This can be your thing to love and to enjoy. I think when I go back to my life as a junior player, like, I had such a shitty attitude about it, and I could never perform the way that I want to perform. And that's the way I wrote Jake's character in the book, is like, he would be all right until he needed to actually perform. And then he would like just go into a direction that he didn't want to go down. And then that led to the ability to not know how to fail. And I want to ask you about failure. And how did you cope with it as an athlete yourself? But how do you work with people to, I don't know, befriend it a little bit more?
Well, you're getting at one of the, what could be identified as a solution for, or what's the direction that you take when failure is present. One option is to befriend it and sort of welcome it. I think for me personally, the sense of failure was super frustrating initially. Like, I did not have a great tolerance for it early on, just because I think in part because I was a youngest child in my family, and so it was like, just hate.
I have to continue this.
Gotta keep fighting, and I certainly have a sort of a tendency toward perfectionism, and just like want to do things with excellence and do it right, and all of that. And so it was very easy for me to get really frustrated about it. I think one of the experiences that I ended up having over, within seasons of rowing, and then over the course of my undergraduate years, was that there's lots of repetitions of things, right? So, failure isn't a fixed point. It's a part of a process that keeps going, and it's too easy for us, and it comes from a biological kind of predisposition in terms of how we tend to perceive things, but it's too easy to feel like it really is life and death, that failure is the end. And so the way that I ask people to work with that, especially because for a lot of people, competition is such a small portion of our athletic endeavors, right? We spend the majority of our time training and practicing. Okay. And so if within that we feel like we're just being tested again and again and again and again, like how I did today, my score today, my, did I hit my paces on my run today? If that sort of feels like everything, such that we feel like, oh, it was a failure, and so I'm a failure, so I won't be able to do the thing. Like, I just don't think that's helpful. So what I ask people to think about more than anything is the way that you are thinking about it, or the way that you are framing it and perceiving it, the effect on you. Is that helpful? And if it's not, can we find another way to focus on it? Right? So in running, a lot of times when people do workouts, which is, like the day of the week when they've got to do like some speed work, and they've got to do these
break
like
it down,
intervals and hit this pace and this much time and that sort of thing. And when there is such a specified program, sort of designed, like, I want you to do this with intention. Those of us who are like, oh, I need to do it perfectly, we have this sense of, if I do everything exactly as prescribed, then I've done it right, then I've passed, then I'm good. We feel a sense of like relief about it. But if we don't, failure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the worst.
And then you label yourself as the failure.
Yeah, and you know, some people definitely feel their worth can be pretty tied to that.
Yeah.
And so really simplistically, like my sort of most common request to people is, can we look at, especially in the training process, but I would say that it's true also even in competition, but especially in the training process, can we look at these, what feel like tests, but can we look at them just as learning opportunities instead, right? So the thing that you're doing, it's an opportunity for your body to be like learning from it. How'd that go? What do I need to refine? Like with repetition and with kind of the tinkering and tailoring that we do to things, we have the ability to adapt and like learn from the things that we've been doing. And that like, that's what training is.
Yeah.
That's what practice is. It's not a test that just goes like, and then it's over. We have to look at it as like, okay, it's one iteration, right? It's one day. And this is where the power of like zooming in and zooming out becomes so important. Because if I look at today and I just go, oh, how'd I play today? I'm zoomed all the way in so that today is basically all I can see, right? It's everything.
Right.
So of course, if I don't think I played very well today and it's everything, like how could I not be a failure? Like how could it not be a disaster? Okay. So that's fine. Like maybe there are days that you don't play as well. That happens. Okay. But if I'm feeling like because it's everything and I feel bad about it, that's not very helpful to me in the bigger process. So I need to be able to zoom out and go, okay, today is one day in a body of this many days where I'm practicing and training and competing and all of this. And so I can look at like, what's the trend? Am I getting any better over time? Am I learning from the practice sessions that I'm doing? Is there development that I can see? And when I can zoom out in that context, I go, right, like a single day doesn't make or break anything.
No.
Right? There's this whole journey.
As long as you keep showing up.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. And so now think about it. I might be training for a particular competition. It's still easy for me to think about this as the end, right? Yeah. Life and death and all the work that goes into it. And I didn't play the way that I wanted to. I'm a total failure. It's all over, whatever. No, hold on. Zoom out even farther. That training cycle, that like build toward that particular competition, well, that's in this body of the lifelong practice, right?
Yeah.
So failure only feels really bad if you look at it as a finite thing, and that kind of determines a sense of worth, and like that's just the end, okay? But if you look at failure just like every other day, like every single day is a learning opportunity. So it's giving me information. And if I didn't play very well today, but I have been in practice, then what did I do or not do today that I can work on practicing more? If there are things like physically in terms of how I perform that like, I'm not that good at that. Well, that's good information. You got to know where you are. Right. So go work on that. You know, like we don't have to be afraid of that.
No, and you don't have to be perfect at everything either. So
I mean, I don't think sports would be fun. I genuinely don't think sports would be fun or interesting.
If we knew that we were going to go out and succeed every single time, I think like you have to have that that ability to know to the unknown of like whatever is going to happen.
Isn't that why we like gambling? Because sometimes,
I think that's why we should like life too. Like, I think like life should be more of like appreciating the unknown. And I mean, I don't think I've ever really always appreciated it. Like I think helping write that book helped me like unlock something in myself, which was great. But I think let's transition to the book because you've known me for a long time, so and you got a chance to read it pretty early. What were your kind of initial takeaways as you look through the Emily lens, but also through the through your lens as what you do as a career?
Well, I as I said to you before, I think one of the things I love about the book is knowing you and just being able to sort of see you in it. and just appreciating like um, the the personal nature of the story. And I think from a professional lens, for me, the what stands out most is how, and I've sort of alluded to this, but I think that sport it's this medium. It's the context in which we are able to like seek and discover and learn and develop as people. And so, I think within the like main character of the book, there's this experience of like early on kind of learning, and then like this sort of move away from it, and then like a return to this familiar space to like keep doing the figuring out, as a person. And I think that, it's awesome to have professional sports, and it's really great to have people who we can kind of see, and whether we idolize or we just appreciate their ability on that very elite level. But the vast majority of us are involved in athletics in some capacity, not because we're ever going to be professionals, but because we get to learn about ourselves through this experience. And that's what I think is so sort of universal in the story. It's that, it doesn't matter as much that whether you're like playing golf or, any other sport. When you have a space to be able to say, okay, I'm ready to show up to understand myself a little bit better. I'm ready to show up and like learn what there is to learn. I'm ready to show up and get clearer on what my goals are, what my values are, and then how do I consistently and reliably operate in alignment with those values day after day, and build a sense of consistency and build some competency, and have this opportunity to really grow. That's a universal story.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for reading it. Thank you for being a friend.
Absolutely.
I mean, there is a lot of me in it. I'm a complex man, as you've known for a long time. Honestly, some of our greatest moments were like post-stadium. And you're just soaking in the afterglow. And I think you'd always just find me kind of like sitting by myself, just looking out. And I've just always been a very deep thinker. And I think it's... I always felt like I had a book inside of me. We've probably even talked about this thing at some point. Like I knew that there was more that I wanted to do. But as I started to play golf again, and I don't even know if you really knew that I played golf like as in the level that I did. Not many people did, because it was like we were so ingrained in this like running community where it's like, oh, everybody's a runner, everybody's a triathlete, everybody's this. It's like, no, like I actually played a lot of golf when I was a kid, and then I had a very, very strained relationship with the game. But I had to reframe it in my head of that it is a game, and then I get to do this, and I get to enjoy it. And then now to bring it to life in a story that people can digest and see if there's something in it that they can take out of it. I mean, I've always been a writer too, so it's just one of those things that I'm so glad it's out there. I'm so glad there are people like you who are a part of my life, but also just like still willing to kind of show up. Like we haven't seen each other in I feel like it's years, but like I mean, I think we saw each other at Joey's wedding like 6 months ago, but before that it had to have been a couple of years.
I think so.
But those are the relationships you build in these communities, and I don't know if there's. I feel like sport is something that brings people together in so many different ways. Whether it's golf, whether it's running, whether it's this, and I think you also now are building this community with your patients and the people who you work with to maybe help them get to a place where I'm at with the sport that I love and the sport that I play. And that's probably very rewarding for you, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about the way that I describe my work to people is I'm really helping people find more in their movement. And some people are focused on performance goals. I want to overcome this barrier, or I want to hit that goal, or that sort of thing. And so it's awesome to be able to like help people understand how to like leverage their mind to really be a bolster to their performance and their experience. and to help them sort of unlock some things, like if they've got this physical capacity but they haven't quite been able to like access it. That's really, really fun. But there's also the whole side of also finding more meaning in your movement practice, and that's where a lot of that like relationship with the with the sport itself becomes really relevant. And like as you're describing, you have this like it's a long time relationship with golf, and and initially there was probably a lot of like curiosity and fun and just sort of like figuring out and like, wow, look what I can do. And then the relationship kind of changes in ways. I think for a lot of people, when their sport becomes something where it feels like, oh, there's a lot that I can do here. Like I want to be really competitive, or I want to sort of pursue something more. It's a little bit like how if you had a friendship, like a best friend, and then you went into business together, and you don't spend as much time together as like friends. You're just really focused on this product that you're trying to produce.
More transactional in some ways.
Yeah, right. And how that, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's a different quality to it unless there's an awareness of really intentionally continuing to cultivate like the joy and the fun and sort of the lightness and the like that friendship that goes along with let's also produce something important, right? And so for a lot of people, some of the challenges that come up are like, I know I still want to do this. I just don't know why it isn't as fun as it used to be, or why I'm not sort of getting as much joy or like pleasure in the experience as I used to. And so that's important. Like we can use sport in different ways. It can serve us in different ways. Sometimes we're trying to produce something, like we're in that business relationship, but we also want it to feel good along the way.
Cool. So, where do people go to find out about what you do, and if you want to plug your business? I know you're busy, but like there could be a lot of golfers who are like, you know what, I gotta talk to Emily.
There you go. I have a website. It's ESaulMovement.com, and that's a good place to find me, and contact information there too. So
cool, awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I really
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having me.